Hey up. So we're taking a little break from the Faces of Death sequels this episode, and it looks like Hard Gore's thrown us something seemingly pretty strange, pretty odd looking. Hopefully so. Anyway, we're taking a look this episode at The Boneyard. This is a 1991 American horror comedy directed by James Cummins, who hasn't done a whole lot directorial wise. This is his debut, and then he did two other films that don't like they were too well received, really. It seems though that he is more of a special effects and creature designer, and in that regard he's got some pretty impressive credits. He worked on things like The Thing, House, The Beast Within, and the recently mentioned Strange Invaders, which is a spiritual sequel to Strange Behaviour that we covered on the channel pretty recently. So at the very least, I'm expecting the special effects in this to be worthwhile. Hopefully, anyway. The film stars Ed Nelson, who has had a ton of bit parts both in film and TV. The film also stars Phyllis Diller, and she is a person you'll definitely have seen at some point in your life. She's quite an influential comedian and actress, and has a whole bunch of credits ranging from the 60s Batman TV show all the way to things like A Bug's Life and stuff like that. You'll have heard her voice in something in your lifetime. You'll definitely heard her laugh as well. She's quite famous for that. So, just judging by the cover, which struck me instantly upon buying this is probably going to be quite a ridiculous film. Now, the question is it good ridiculous or is it annoying ridiculous? Well, let's have a look, shall we?
I gotta have that key.
Forget it, lady. So that's what happened. Boom!
Party hardy.
The plot follows two cops who are trying to convince a retired psychic to come back and help them with their current case. Their current case being that 3 kids have been kidnapped, locked in a morgue, and fed human remains by their captor who claims that they were demons. The psychic agrees, and they head over to the morgue to check out the bodies, but these might not be the average corpses that they were expecting. This film is incredibly boring, and it's such a shame because there's a really good premise in here. I bet a writer or director or both at the helm probably could have made something really good out of this, but as far as this goes, it just sort of dryly doles out information to us, and it takes an hour to kick in, and then when it does kick in, it still likes to take its time with things. Such a shame, really. The acting for the most part in this is actually pretty decent. There's the odd bad line here and there, don't get me wrong, but it's not bad at all, to be honest. It's fine. The main issue is the characters, I'd say. So because this film has quite a slow pace, you'd think it'd spend some of that time building up these characters. And it just doesn't really, meaning that we don't really have anything to latch onto with the people that we're seeing on screen, which is always an issue. Now, it brings up these big character traits, and then it doesn't delve much more into them. It's quite shallow. It makes them quite two-dimensional. They generally have one or two quirk about them, and it doesn't really delve into why or much outside of that. An example, the psychic. We have a psychic in this film, so you'd think that there'd be some cool, you know, like in Patrick that we watched not too long ago, you'd think there'd be some cool psychic stuff. No, she has two visions quite early on in the film, and then they just don't do anything with it again. Why was she a psychic at that point? Why bother, you know? She could just be someone who used to be a cop and needed to come back on the case or something. You didn't need to make her a psychic. And then there's the girl who they thought she was dead, she tried to off herself, but turns out she's alive. Her character trait is she tried to off herself, and that is it. And she don't really do much in the story. She's kind of useless, and it spends a bit of time just telling us why she did it and stuff, and then just forgets about her character for the next 25 minutes. And it's like, why? Well, one, why is she here? And two, if she has to be here, why do we need to know this about her? Because it adds nothing to the overall story at all. Yeah, it's messy in that regard. A positive note though, the gore is excellent. The effects, the gore, the monsters, they all look so good, and I was genuinely impressed throughout. I would easily say that this is some of the best monster effects and gore that we've seen in this collection so far. Absolutely. The little demon kids are so cool, their designs are so good, and then you get the big monsters towards the end, and again they just look amazing and gooey and bloody, and it just works so well. But it doesn't really use them that much, especially the bigger monsters. It saves them to the last, like, big climactic moment, I guess. Fair enough. But it just doesn't use them enough in that last bit. It spends too much time with characters just sort of doing boring things and waiting around, or getting stuck on a ladder, you know, stuff like that. And it's like, just show me these monsters, because you clearly put a lot of time and effort into them, and they are so cool. More of that would have really enhanced this film, but as far as it stands, there's just not enough of these cool, amazing effects to really help the film in any way. So, it's made okay. Like, the effects are good, but then the camera work can dip into really, really crap at times. Sometimes it feels like the camera's just been plonked down and they've just gone, right, do your entire scene, and you get a 5-minute long shot, static shot, and it just feels lazily put together. The music can kind of work against it at times as well. It can be quite bombastic and big, and when you've got big music over a scene where nothing's happening, it just kind of highlights how little is actually happening in the scene. It's a shame, because the music's not too bad. In a bigger, better film, it would have really worked. And there was no need for it to go as crazy with the power ballad in the credits that it did. But you know what? I appreciate it. That was a great song.
Bingo. Skeleton key. Well, that's appropriate for this place.
This film is a horror comedy, and I haven't really touched on the humour in this yet, have I? And that's because there isn't really any, to be honest. It's not as funny or as over-the-top ridiculous as I was expecting. The film starts 15 minutes into the film, and we've already dryly covered dead kids, cannibalism and cancer. And it's like, wow, this is not funny. Like, there's some good dialogue scenes between people, especially in that beginning opening bit, but there's not much humour at all. I thought, well, Phyllis Diller's in this, you know, she's a famous comedian. Maybe she'll be bringing the jokes. Again, not really, to be honest. She's the funniest character in the thing, don't get me wrong, in the film, don't get me wrong about that, but she's not as funny as I was expecting her to be. Her main shtick, really, is that her name is Mrs. Poopenplatz, and if you find that one joke name funny for 90 minutes, this might be the film for you. But you hear it 2 or 3 times and you're just like, yeah, that's a name, it's not that funny really, is it? And then I guess there's the poodle monster as well, but again, all the film kind of does is just go, here's a poodle monster. And I'm like, yes, but why? There's not much more to it. It's very shallow, I guess, with its humour. It's very much, here's a funny idea. Isn't that a funny idea? And you're like, yeah, but I need more to make it funny. Like, you just showing me something isn't that funny, really. Plus, the poodle monster's plastered all over the back of the case and in the marketing for it, so it wasn't a surprise. And the big monster doesn't move that much, so there's no difference really between that and a still image. So yeah, really, really light on the humour in this. Just didn't work for me in the comedy sense. There's not much information about this film online, to be honest. There's a few bits of trivia on IMDb. Apparently it was shot in 5 weeks, and you can kind of tell because it's all in one location for the most part. Apparently one of the explosions caused a fire on set. Yeah, don't know, do with that what you will. And apparently, this is probably the most interesting fact, Alice Cooper was approached to be in this film and turned it down. Wonder if that would have made it a bit more famous in its time. I don't know, really. I guess he's done a lot of bit work, hasn't he, really? So, I don't know. But yeah, that's about as much information as I could find on this film. It's just sort of a bit of a mystery, I guess. Lastly, before we move on, I want to talk about the VHS, the original VHS release of this film. So this is one of the early examples of a reversible cover for a VHS. But it wasn't just different artwork, it was different tone completely. One cover was advertising the film as a horror, the other was advertising it as a comedy. So if you worked in like a video rental shop or just like HMV or something like that, or probably not HMV, it'll have been sealed, but you know, like a Blockbuster or something, you could swap the cover around and see which one sold better, and then you could just sell it as either a horror or a comedy depending on what was leaving the shop quicker. But can you imagine getting this as a comedy? Like, you pick this up in the comedy section at Blockbuster and you're like, oh cool, I'll check this out. You'd be very disappointed. Okay, time for the print then, and it's pretty good to be honest. It might be one of the best ones we've had yet. There was only 2 things worth noting, I guess. One is in 4x3, and the other, there was one instance of quite a quick but like loud jarring glitch. It was all pixely and made like quite a weird static noise. But outside of that, it's very watchable, colours look good, it's clear, and yeah, probably one of the best we've seen. And on the disc, we get the usual stuff, chapter select, trailers for this, and trailers for Hard Gore films. But we also get more things, for once. We get 3 interviews. Nice. We get a 17-minute interview with Phyllis Diller, and at the beginning there's like the sound of a truck backing up. Fair enough. 18-minute interview with the director James Cummins, and we get a 12-minute interview with the producer. Not bad, I'd say. To be honest, I'd say that this is about on par with what Shameless has been doing recently on their Blu-rays, just chucking 2 or 3 interviews on the disc and that's about it. Not bad. Not bad at all, to be honest, and it's about time we got something. Okay, case time. This cover is so stupid, but you know what? It works. It caught my attention from the second I saw it on eBay, so good job there. On the back, I'm not a fan of the font they chose. Feels kind of weird to read. The blurb is fine, makes it out to be a little wackier than it actually is though. This sentence is a bit odd. Describes one of the characters as a failed suicide. Seems harsh, but then at the same time, it is her only character trait, so fair enough, I guess. The runtime's out by about 5 minutes, the film's actually 93 minutes, and this is another film that should have been a 15 but was bumped up to an 18 because of the trailers. Again, they're telling us as well, which is nice. Lastly, this has one of the bigger catalogues on the inside. Nice stuff. Overall then, this was, unfortunately, a massive disappointment to me. There's something here, Like, the idea of kids getting locked in a morgue, fed human flesh, the demon stuff, that could really work. You know what it'd work well as? Sort of like a gritty cop thriller. Something like I Saw the Devil, something like that. That sort of premise would work really well in that environment, but unfortunately what we get here is a boring, drawn-out slog that feels lazily put together, but then has some of the best effects I've seen in the entire collection. It's such a weird film. There is something in it, but the overall package is just a massive letdown. It's a shame, it's a shame. This only gets a very, very light recommendation from me. And I'll reiterate, it's boring as shit. But there's a few, if you've seen anything in the clips that I've shown, anything that's made you go, ooh, that might actually be interesting, you might get something out of it. It just didn't really do it for me. Now, if you're in the market for a copy of this DVD isn't too bad. There was one big glitch, but outside of that, the print's fine, there's special features. It's not too bad, especially if you can find it cheap. But there is also the 88 Films Blu-ray that got put out a little while back. Now, that's probably a way better option because it's probably got a great high-def print and loads of special features and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if it's quite worth the price, not for me anyway. It's usually only about a tenner, but I don't know if I'd spend a tenner on this film, to be honest. I think this might be worth getting if it's very, very cheap. Outside of that, I don't know. So, it's a shame. It's always disappointing to see a film with a lot of potential fall short, I think. It's always a shame. But, next episode, we're back to us Mondo Shock Docs. Ooh. Lucky me, can't wait to check back in with Dr. Gross. Because next episode, we're taking a look at Faces of Death 3.